we're here to talk about work visas in animation. So I think this is awesome. This is one of the most brought up topics that we usually have from mentees and Rise Up Animation, and rightfully so. I mean, there's not a lot of information out there on the internet or people to talk to about this kind of stuff, and especially because everyone's experience is different, right? So everybody, Aray, Doeri, Benson, Toniko, thank you so much for like coming on this panel and just kind of like schooling us on like everything that we don't know. Yeah, we can get started with introductions. If you guys don't, hi Bobby, introductions. But Doeri, so we have Doeri Welch, who I've known for a long time. So Doeri started her animation career in production at Disney Animation Studios, where she worked on Hunchback of Notre Dame, Hercules, Tangled, and many, many more, I'm sure. And she later retired from Disney to direct the recruitment team for DreamWorks feature animation. Awesome. And is currently scouting talent for Nickelodeon TV and features, which is very cool. So, Doeri, thank you very much for being here. Hey, Doeri! With the nicest background I've ever seen. That's not even a virtual background. That's her actual house. She lives in Martha Stewart's living room. So Aray Santos is in the building. Aray is a self-taught character animator who I've never had the privilege to meet in person, but hopefully someday. Aray's worked all over the world in such studios as Pixar, Sony Vancouver, and Double Negative, and NBC Moving Picture Company?
Moving Picture Company, yeah.
Yep, thank you, bro. In England, and he's currently a senior animator at Jellyfish Pictures on the studio's first animated feature film. So congrats, man. That's awesome. I can't wait to see. Yeah, I can't wait to see. Thank you for being here. Benson.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Of course. I think this is Aray's idea. This is like his idea for a panel. And he brought it up. And we're like, oh, dude, that sounds amazing. But thank you for being here, dude. It's awesome to have you. And then there's Benson Shum, originally from Vancouver, BC. Vancouver! Benson, by the way, is one of my best friends. But he has been working in the animation industry for like 20 years, which is crazy because he's like 25 years old. That's not true. He's currently working as an animator at Disney Animation, having worked on such films as Wreck-It Ralph, Frozen, Big Hero 6. By the way, Big Hero 6, remember when Hero like cries at the Baymax's belly at his brother? That's Benson.
That's me crying.
Just wanted to embarrass him. Big Hero 6, Zootopia, Moana, Frozen 2, Raya and the Last Dragon, and is currently on Encanto. And Benson, because he's multi-talented, is also a children's book author and illustrator, which is amazing and incredible. So welcome, Benson. It's great to see you. I haven't seen you in like a week. So it's good to catch up. And then finally we have Toniko Pantoja, who is a 2D animator and story artist who has worked for DreamWorks feature on Dragons 3, Trolls, Croods 2, and DreamWorks TV on Puss in Boots and Kipo, amongst others. I love Kipo. Because he's lazy, Toniko has also worked with Tonko House, Base Effects, Riot Games, and he's currently at Netflix Animation while on the side developing his own projects for his own studio, Brushtale Works. So clearly someone who should get his stuff in order and work harder. But Toniko, thank you for coming, man. Thank you for coming. It's good to see you. Your hair is like 4 times as long as it was last time I saw you, but that's quarantine.
Yeah. You know, it's kind of like I get
I debate on keeping long hair because like people sometimes like when I log in a Zoom call and I haven't seen anyone in a while, they're like, "Oh my God, Toniko, your hair is so long. It looks so cool." I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah.
you know."
Yeah.
But then it's so hard to maintain. I realize long hair is so hard to take care of.
They could make the joke of greeting you as Mrs. Pantoja. Mrs. Pantoja, it's great to meet you. I love your I love your son, Toniko. Anyway, like I think this is a super valuable panel, and we should kind of get started. So, thank you everyone, panelists around the world, for being here, and I hope you guys are all doing well in these kind of trying times, and hope you guys are happy, safe, and healthy. And 2021, we'll see. Let's go, new year. It's a new year. Let's do it. Let's make our dreams come true. But as Doeri mentioned up top, if you guys are kind of filing in, and we know you know this, but it bears repeating that all of us here, the panelists, and we're all animation industry professionals, just kind of sharing our experiences with what we've gone through, what they've gone through with like visas and that kind of stuff. And we're not so much like lawyers or immigration officials, except for Benson, who probably, I think, graduated from Harvard Law School or something like that, and is living in the grass. But yeah, let's get it started. So let's jump on to the questions. I wanted to jump on to questions as soon as possible. And so we can kind of start out with, and I'll throw it out to the group. What kind of work visas are there to begin with? Let's start slow. Let's start from the beginning. Let me throw it out to anyone. I can throw it out to the room, but like we're looking at kind of the different.
Is this specific to the U.S. or just kind of all over?
I would say all over.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's like, for the most part, from my understanding of the work visas that are available for Canada and the UK, and I think also Australia, you have like your open work permit, and then you have like your specific work permit. And essentially those are like the two main types. So you have like the ones that are, available for and the specific company that sponsors you and they bring you over, and then you can only stay with that one company. Or sometimes you can apply for open work permit by yourself, and that allows you to kind of work wherever. But again, it's all very specific to different places.
Yeah, I'll echo what Eric said. It's I think for Canada, there's the TN visa, which was the one that when the company I worked for, when Disney sponsored me, it was through the TN. And I believe is it the NAFTA, Doeri? Correct me if I'm wrong. But I think it's Canada, US, and Mexico. There's an agreement on there that makes it. Oh, Doeri, you're muted. There you go.
Yeah, now it's called, because it got cleverly renamed, it's called the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement instead of NAFTA.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, so that's right. That's for Mexico and Canada. And then there's sort of a similar thing with Australia. So if somebody is Australian, they may be eligible for an E3 visa, which has some similar things. So those are super common. And I'd say the thing that's changed recently, with the old administration that's leaving, is that they've put harder caps on the numbers that they're processing. They've eliminated some premium processing options that used to be available. The studios could kick in a little extra fee and push it through faster. So that got canceled, and they've also just become more rigorous with the paperwork. They're just checking it more carefully right now because the Trump administration doesn't want to let more people in than they have to. Hopefully that's all gonna, change a little bit slowly as the new administration takes over again. So that's a plus. But so yeah, the TN visa, the E3 visa are both options. And then one other thing to think about is if you've ever worked for a subsidiary of a company somewhere within the last 3 years, then there's something called an L1 visa that sometimes a company can get. Like, let's say when DreamWorks had the India studio, they could bring people over to the US under an L1A or B visa, and that was either management or somebody who has specialized knowledge. So that is sometimes possible if you've worked for a subsidiary company for a period of time and it's 3 or less years ago. So that's another option. And then another potential, although more rare, is an O1 visa. And the O1 visa is extraordinary ability. And they really mean that. You have to really prove that you're an expert, that you're highly skilled and recognized in the field. So it basically means, like, if somebody Googles, will they find you as an expert in the field? Those are harder to get, and they're a limited number are given sort of based on industries, although that's not really a formal thing. So extraordinary ability for O1 visa is available for people that are coming in like at a higher level. If you're a student, you can work with your university on getting, if you're a student at a US university, you can work on getting an OPT or a CPT, which is a training visa, basically. And basically, you arrange that with the careers office at your school. And one tip I can give you about that is you really want to make sure that you start setting them up when you first start, that it's something that you might want to do, so that they're already sort of guiding you towards that decision, and making sure also that they pass on to you anything that's coming from studios they have relationships with about internships that might put you in touch with great jobs to try to get. So those are options for people who are going to American universities, is OPT and CPT. And they are limited, so you want to do the paperwork, make the application, so that the time period when you start it, when you get your employment card and start the time clicking, is when you have the gig. Because some people have gotten them and then not found an internship and sort of used their time.
Wait, I have a question about that, actually. So to apply for like an OPT or CPT, do you have to get an offer or a deal memo or some sort of like offer from a studio before you apply for those? Or do you get those, like the OPT or the CPT, before that offer?
You can set it up with the university ahead of time so that once you get the offer, they're ready to submit it for you. That's why I would suggest going in really early on and starting a relationship with that office so that they're ready to help you out when you have the opportunity. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was just gonna add like about the visa stuff. There's also the standard work visa, the H1B. That used to be quite easy to get, but by the time I applied for it, it got super hard already, and I can't imagine what it's like now. I think this is when I was under my OPT, I was trying to get an H1B, and I was told they were only reserving like 50,000 visas for like 350,000 applicants, and they were reserving like half of that for like people with PhDs at the time. So we basically had like 15% chance. And we also heard rumors, I can't confirm if it's true, but like tech companies like Google bought some of those visas. Again, I can't confirm if that's true. I might be wrong. So even though like the studios were sponsoring for that H1B visa, I still didn't get it because of how hard it got over time.
Yeah, it's actually a lottery. So basically what happens is the studio prepares your case. So let's say you're a student there in the US and you're working on an OPT or CPT, or you just have an internship there or whatever, and the studio wants to make you an offer, then they have to prepare the case. So most studios want you to have your documents into them by January of a given year, right? And then the lottery happens in April. So they only pick, and it's literally supposed to be a drawing. You're not supposed to be able to buy your way into it.
Okay.
But
That confirms.
who knows, you know, nobody can really verify that, I suppose. It does seem like there's a lot of high-powered tech things that seem to get all the H1Bs. But they pick out the names, and actually there are 65,000 H1Bs. And this goes back, like they haven't increased the number of H1Bs for like 15 years. So, you know, when you think about how the labor market's changed and all that, it's amazing that they haven't increased the number. So 65,000 are picked for people with master's degrees and above, and 20,000 are picked for people with bachelor's degrees or bachelor equivalent. So you would think 85,000 is a lot, but it's not when it's spread across the whole country, the whole US. And so they want you to have your stuff ready to submit by January. The lottery happens in April. And then if you're picked and your paperwork is perfect and goes through, then you can actually start work in October. So you can see from prepping in January to being able to start work in October, it's a long haul. And a lot of studios are really hiring kind of just in time, or they're hiring extra people because they've just gotten to this place in production where it's like, oh, clearly we're going to need 4 more animators. So let's hire 4 more animators to get to our end date for animation so we can make our release date. So let's go after them. We don't necessarily have 10 months of time to take a chance that you might win a drawing and get an H1B. So it is difficult. And somebody just posted H1B needs a bachelor's degree. That's correct, for 20,000 of them. And then the 65,000 other ones actually take a master's degree.
True, yeah. With the degree as a requirement to qualify for an H1B visa. You know, that's also kind of why, like, there's a lot of people in the United States that say like, oh, you don't need formal education to work in animation. But then that's not entirely true for people who are dealing with visas, because like they have to have some degree to actually qualify for that work visa.
Correct. Somebody was just asking, so after OPT or CPT period, the H1B is your only option? No, it wouldn't be your only option. Definitely not.
No, you can get, can you still get an OPT extension, or did they get rid of that? I can't.
You can't get an OPT extension. And usually it ends up being about 18 months that you can get it extended. There's a thing that the company has to have, though, to process that. And basically, all companies don't have it. So they have to buy into a system and process all their visas through that system to be able to do the STEM OPT extensions.
Yeah.
So a lot of places just don't have it. Like I know DreamWorks.
I'm seeing the chats. They're saying e-verification. So
yeah.
Yeah, DreamWorks does not do it. The last time I tried to do it with them, it's like smaller studios that are more open with e-verification. But when it comes to big studios, you won't see that a lot.
I'm not sure this question was asked, but can you apply for an H1B on your own, or does a company have to sponsor you for that?
It has to be a company, from what I remember. Yeah.
Okay.
I think you can apply for an O1 by yourself, but
right.
Again, it's the chances of you getting that, it's very up in the air,
It's also a lot of work. I remember because I couldn't get the H1B, so my other resort was to do the O1, and that requires like a lot of different hurdles. It's not just like, having like a credibility or a strong resume and having like a prolific presence online. It's also like, dealing with the lawyer visa and how do we approach getting that O1 as an independent? Like, do you form a company that acts as your agent, and that agent suddenly becomes your sponsor? So there's a lot of like different ways to get that O1.
Yeah.
Oh.
The thing I would say is building your materials as if you might someday go for an O1 is a good thing to do, because you need all that stuff for almost any visa you're putting in for, and it just helps build your career and your credibility anyway. So I would advise that everybody should start right away kind of compiling their materials to make a case for extraordinary ability. I mean, basically, it's anything that makes you recognized, right? So, and these are good things to do for your career anyway, and to, you know, have a good resume and interview for a job. And those things would be things like volunteering to be on panels, to do conference talks, to present if you have a short film, to present it to studios, or go on, you know, a tour of studios with your short. Anything where you're mentoring or judging or being on a selection committee, anything like that that kind of marks you out as an expert in the field is great. And then document that stuff with thank you emails, save the thank you emails, get people to take photographs when you're doing it so that you have some documentation that you did all that stuff. And then also just collect any kind of mentions of you in online articles or publications. Build a presence online. You know, some of the folks who participate in Rise Up and Lightbox have done amazing things with really building a following online, so people really know who they are. And citing a website or a blog that has, you know, 100,000 followers is also a great way to add to your credibility. And then, of course, trying to win awards, so doing short films or things like that that will put you in the position to be nominated for Academy Award or Student Academy Award or Annie's or a Visual Effects Award, or even taking your film to a number of festivals. All those things help you kind of build that case. And then I would also say that always keep your IMDb and your LinkedIn up to date online, because if the studio is interested in you, a recruiter might see your stuff and approach the immigration department, and they're called different things at different studios. They may say, oh, we're going to hook you up with our global mobility department, or, you know, there's a lot of different, you know, clever names for it. But so a recruiter might go to that department and say, hey, I really like this guy, Ere. We like his work. We haven't talked to him yet. What do you think just from his online presence and his resume? Do you think we might be able to put him in an H1B lottery? You know, so it's important to keep all that stuff up online, up to date with your latest, so that if somebody is scouting you, that they have all that information to work with. So that's my spiel about,
No,
you know,
that's awesome.
Just start gathering all that stuff as if you might go for an O1 someday, so that you have it all in order. And to that point too, I'd say it's important to just keep all your stuff together, especially if you're traveling around a lot for work. You're going to need things like your academic records, you know, your college transcripts. You're going to need some pay stubs from all the places that you work, especially if you're trying like to get an L visa and prove that you worked at a subsidiary company to come over to the US and work. So having all that stuff, you know, in a little portable file that can travel with you, or, you know, under your bed in your parents' house, so they know where to get it and get you what you need when you need it. That's super important, just having all that stuff ready, because if somebody's going to work on a visa for you, you've got to work with them really closely and respond quickly.
Yeah, when I travel, I actually bring a folder of like my stuff from my previous O1 applications, where it's like about what 90 to 400 pages, just in case. Like, you never know if they'll need that. But something I'd also like to add to, you know, what you could add to that application too is the testimonial letters. So like you have people in the industry or people in like curators of festivals that can like write letters about you. But usually, in most cases, it's you or the lawyer that you're working with that writes the letters, kind of emulating that person so that that person can sign it. But yeah, like testimonial letters from that person saying like, oh, I know this person because he worked on my film and he is great. He's important to the United States of America, et cetera, et cetera. Like he is a gem.
For the industry.
Yeah.
Another thing to actually add to all that great stuff that was said, I think it's also important to keep up to date with your travel papers. So like your passport and stuff like that, because once all the stuff that Doeri mentioned and Toniko mentioned where, you know, they want to take it and start your application, you want to make sure that your passport is up to date, because they can only, if your passport ends really soon, that kind of limits your work visa opportunity, or else you have to reapply and then you'd be really stressed out trying to send your stuff off and get the photos done. So just make sure that stuff is also online as well.
Yeah, I would say like 6 months before you travel, like you have an updated passport, or like your passport can't like expire within the next 6 months. That's what I was told when I had a passport that was about to expire in 6 months, and they told me at the check-in for like an air flight I was taking. They just warned me. They said I'm okay, but yeah, you want to like renew your passport 6 months before it expires. Like that's more ideal.
I wanted to kind of add a little bit, one more thing here. One of the visas that wasn't mentioned was the J1 visa, which is the internship visa, which is actually the one that I was on a few years ago. And this it's a question I've been asked a lot of like, oh well, I'm not in the US. Can I still intern at Disney or Pixar and all these different places? Personally, my answer is that it's a case-by-case basis, but ultimately, yes. Like you can still intern at these big companies, and that I think is very, very important because again, interning at these places gives you so much experience, gives you, to me personally, at the end of the day, it's all about that experience. It's all about, what do you want personally from the industry? What do you want personally from this career? But that process, I think, as far as I understand, like you have to be sponsored by the company in order to, get the J1 visa. But again, it's as long as you just have all the paperwork ready, you have all your, documents up to date, everything should just kind of, smooth, flow by as smooth as possible.
That's it. I was gonna say, that's a really beneficial thing to go through for like a J1 visa, and it can actually help you later down the line for like later visas like the H1B or the O1 and eventually the EB1. I mean, for someone like, I've never gone through a J1. I've never done any internship. So like, I think when you do things where like you're submitting your own work to festivals, you're really investing in your own online portfolio or presence, or you're doing all this stuff. You can't, and you're not really relying on like the internship stuff. That also helps because like for my case, when I tried to get the O1 after my H1B was declined or it didn't go through, I tried to go with it through DreamWorks. They didn't want to do it because I didn't have enough professional experience to qualify for that. So that's kind of why I went with a lawyer, because I could work with my own strengths of how I can get the O1 without my professional experience, because I was relatively new. I didn't have any internship experience and I didn't really have a lot of work experience. So that's kind of why I went through the O1, is so that I could use my own like work as an advantage for that.
Yeah, I'd say there's a risk either way, right? Like there's plenty of lawyers out there that will take your money and promise you a lot of results, and they can't necessarily deliver it. And definitely would go specifically to an immigration lawyer for that kind of advice. A lot of times the studios take a more cautious approach because they know that they have to protect the company. It's like it's their job to protect the company from any issue along the way, or promise that they could get somebody a visa and have a production holding the spot in the animation department that's headed into crunch, and now they can't deliver that person to the seat on time. So the corporate lawyers that work with the studios are always going to be a little bit more cautious than a private lawyer. So a private lawyer is trying to get your business, so they're going to say, yeah, we could do it. So you just have to balance those two things out, right? And not get taken advantage of. But plenty of people are able to get their own visa, especially O1 visas, that way. I was just going to circle back to the J1 for a second. And it's actually also known as a cultural exchange visa. So different countries have slightly different rules about J1s in terms of what happens after the J1. Some countries, you don't have to go back home right afterwards. Sometimes you have to go back within a certain time span. And other countries, as soon as your J1's done, you have to go home and work in your home country for a specified amount of time, like a year or 2 years. So that's something to be aware of with the J1. And the other thing that's kind of happened, I think, is, years ago, 10 years ago, maybe, we were always looking at J1s for trainees. But then as things started to tighten up on getting other kinds of visas, the studios got a little bit more conservative about it, I would say. I don't have data to prove that, it's just a feeling, but I think because what happened was so many people came in that were fabulous and we loved them, and they were there for the year for their J1, and then we couldn't get any other kind of visa for them, and they had to go back home, and the studio frankly was very pissed off at the people in the department and the directors and everybody in the culture at the studio was like, how come you're not keeping this person? And it's like, we want to keep this person, we just can't get a visa. And it was such a heartbreak that I think people got a little bit more conservative on going for those J1s. Something to keep in mind. They aren't as sort of popular as they were a few years ago because of that experience.
I'm seeing a couple questions in the chat that I kind of wanted to. Benson actually just answered some of the questions. When it's on with the topic of not having a degree, I think from what I understand from my personal experiences, I don't have a degree either, and it's extremely difficult to get visas in the U.S. without a degree, but it's considerably easier by comparison to get visas in other places in the world if you want to work. So if you want to work in Canada without a degree, it's easier. It's still, you still have to have your information, you still have to have your reel, you still have to have all that kind of stuff, but it's still very possible. You can work in the UK without a degree, again, very possible. Australia, all these different things. But if you're wondering about what it's like to get a degree, what it's like to get a job in the US without a degree, and if you're not Canadian, I think it's Canadian or Mexican, I think it's a little trickier.
I think also, I'm not sure if this is completely correct, but I think even if your degree doesn't have to be specifically in animation, I think if you have a degree, it shows the government that you've been educated, I don't know, that level of education. But because, like Eric said, I also don't have a degree, but I've been working in Canada. I've been working for like 12 years before I even came into the US. So I feel like those years of experience have built enough for the lawyers to kind of to apply for my TN visa. So it's possible for sure. And then the same thing, like from the TN that I went to the O1, that I didn't go back to school to get a degree either. So it's all on experience, and also what Doeri says, collecting all this information and just keep building that folder is what's gonna help.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, even if you built that folder and you get your O1, you would still want to continue like collecting more material in case you get your O1 renewed, because they're going to relay for like updates or like recent things to kind of justify why they'd allow you to get an update or a O1 renewal. So like it's something that you kind of have to keep doing too in a way, but keep all your old stuff too.
Mm-hmm. I know. Yeah. Sounds great. Thank you guys. That was question number 1. So we'll see you guys. Have a great weekend. No, I'm just kidding. This is great. This is awesome. Thank you guys. There's so much information. You guys said so many letters and numbers. I need a chart. I'm very visual.
OPTC, WIADW.
Yo. J1, yeah. J1, yeah.
CPT, OPT, H1, EB1, O1A, O1B. Yeah. There's so much different variations.
That's what I know.
Yeah.
But I know. Yep, I know it all by heart. But, yo, thank you guys.
Don't forget, there's marriage visa.
Marriage visa, yes. So, hey, single, so, I mean, there's also that. Or maybe we should just get together, Toniko.
Well, I have a green card already, so I'm good.
Oh, hey. There you. So the second question. I offered myself to you, Toniko.
I totally would.
Okay, fine.
I'll marry you, Bobby.
Yeah, I'm always here.
I'll keep that in mind. The second question would be, and I don't think we covered this in that last topic, is do all companies sponsor work visas? And to what degree? Doeri, do you want to kick this one off? I know, sorry.
Yeah. Some companies don't have the budget. So far, the major animation studios that I know about or have worked at, each production usually has a little chunk of money in their budget that's discretionary to use for visas. Sometimes they end up having to use it for overtime to finish their movie, or whatever. There are reasons why they just can't. And then always the need by date is a thing, right? So if animation is going to hit its crunch period at a certain time and we have to hire 10 animators for it, it will often come up like, well, can we start hiring now so that we can look at people who need visas? Because even a TN visa, which is sort of like the fastest one to get, can add 6 to 12 weeks to the hiring process. So you have to have that extra time really to see it. So sometimes it's budgeted in terms of money and time, and sometimes it isn't, especially if the need is added during the production process and wasn't known about from the beginning. So I would say most of the major animation studios do have a desire to do visas. I mean, our audience is a global audience, right? So we want a global workforce that reflects our audience, and we want to be telling everybody stories. So we're always like, on the recruiting side and on the studio side, we're always trying to get clever and look for ways of like, well, what about this? What if he's a permanent resident of Canada? And then, we're always trying to figure out how we can help somebody along. But everybody doesn't. Most of the main studios do, is the short answer.
And to add on that also, I feel like for me, when I was applying from Canada, I didn't necessarily think about if the company would get a visa. I would just apply. If it's a job that I'm interested in, I would just apply. And the worst they could say is no, or they'd be like, oh, we want to hire you. And then it comes down to like where you're from and all that kind of stuff. And they say, oh, we don't do visas. But at least you made a connection and it could lead to something else. And, we always hope that they would do visa, but sometimes because of whatever the situation is, they can't do it. I feel like it doesn't hurt to just apply to those companies that you are interested in.
Totally.
I think that's a huge point for just even more than visas. Like, I think a lot of people always say like, oh, but I'm not a senior, I'm not a mid, I'm not a whatever. Like, just apply anyway. Yeah. Because you never know what's going to happen. And like Benson said, like, you build that relationship, they know your work, they know who you are, they've seen your name. And I think when people see your name and then you apply later on and they remember that name, that's a lot bigger than just like, a cold application, in my opinion.
Yeah. And like what Doeri said, they could get creative and try to get a visa for you, you know, even if that's something that they don't usually do. So that could happen as well.
That's so important, Ari, what you're saying about just apply. Start having a relationship with that company and those recruiters. Collect all the recruiters you can and have relationships with them. And then, you know, the most important thing is, like, of course, keep updating your work and get great work into your materials so that they can help put you forward and help make a case. There's a couple alternatives too that I would just mention, like, okay, if a company doesn't have a visa program or there's not a visa available for this particular opening because of the timing or whatever, still apply for the job, start the relationship. And then also you can ask the recruiter, like, are there vendor studios working on this project anywhere? Like, you know, Jellyfish is working on a DreamWorks project. So if you knew that and you were able to get a position in London, you could go to Jellyfish and work on a DreamWorks film and start to craft your relationship with all of those creatives and supervisors and everybody from DreamWorks. So that's an option, is look and see if there's vendor studios involved that might be somewhere near you. And then also a lot of companies have partner organizations that are in different countries. So that's something that a recruiter might be able to help you explore. I know some studios have been able to hire people in Canada that they couldn't get TNs for in a different way because they had a Canadian entity that they could hire them from. So that's also a possibility. But I think, you know, especially right now with COVID going on and with the change in administration, anything is possible and nothing is possible. You know, I mean, you could get a visa right now. You can't travel anywhere, and nobody wants Americans to travel to their country either at this moment because we're so bad with the COVID stuff. So I think, like, we all have to keep going. And the other big option is freelance. Because of one of the silver linings, if there is one, about COVID is that everybody has proven that working remotely really works. And so the tools are better now. The way we're connecting right now, really, it works. So the other thing to do is just to apply for positions, get your work out there. And if somebody loves your design work or loves your storyboards or loves your animation, and they can make the case like, hey, what if we freelance this person from India? What if we freelance this person from London? Could we do that? You know, do we have a business entity there that would allow us to freelance this person? So, and freelance, there really is not a lot of requirement. You have to come up with, you know, exactly what is the scope of work, what is the schedule of payment going to be. It's work that's being done outside of the local area, so it's not under union jurisdiction. So I think that that silver lining aspect of COVID really proving that remote working could work has busted open the freelance market in some really cool ways.
Absolutely. Like, and I know that now, like, people have been considering, like, moving back to their hometowns because of how doable it is for everyone to work from home. You know, I have some friends who actually moved out of California, some moved out of the States entirely, just to be able to do that or to be close with the family.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe after this COVID, like, it won't be a requirement anymore to have to move here to work here. But I mean, it's still very early to say.
It would definitely open opportunities for, you know, for that, which is great, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
From what I understand, because I'm at Jellyfish right now, and at the beginning of the production, we were kind of all thinking everything was going to be in-house, and we're going to get a bunch of people from, you know, we're going to sponsor a lot of visas. But then, you know, COVID happened, and now we had someone in Australia, some people in America, some people in Swaziland, like all over the world. And it's, you know, I again, very proud of my company, how they've just pivoted to kind of adapt to that. And I think, like, that is so evident of how possible it is for the entire industry. Like, there's, you know, you can be anywhere, and as long as you have the talent, as long as you have the skill, And as long as you have the relationships, like it's anything's possible, really.
Yeah.
Totally, yeah.
I'm gonna go on to the next question, but I will say to your point, Eric, it's really interesting to see the big studios pivot and see what they can do, not only in terms of like the COVID stuff, but even pivoting to a place where they can hire more diverse and inclusive, like artists, like behind the scenes and that kind of stuff. So that's really cool to see, like in 2020 and 2021. But okay, so the next question, guys, is what role do you need to be at to be sponsored by a company for a work visa? So, for example, I'm a PA, I'm a production assistant. Will the company sponsor me? Is there a specific kind of like role that will get you sponsored by a company, specific, or like kind of like where you are in your career?
That's a hard one because I think production assistant it's an entry-level role, and it doesn't take a ton of specialized knowledge already to get that role. And I know this isn't the answer you're hoping for, but I'm just going to be really honest. And that is that most studios won't sponsor a production assistant because there's so many people to pick from who want to get into production, or artists who want to take production management roles to get a foot in the door. So it's a harder sell to do it that way. I would say that you're probably better off to try to find more local work and build your experience first than try to apply for a visa for a production assistant role.
That's great. Yeah,
but I'd say any of the creative roles, there's always the possibility, especially if it's a high demand role or something that's very technical.
I feel like with work visas, it's more specialized to what you want to really focus in. Whereas with production assistants, like there's just a lot of people, and like the skills are a bit more general than, let's say, if you were to go into a studio as an animator or a viz dev artist.
Right.
I think that I don't. Do you think it's possible to still get a visa for a production assistant, or is that like they don't really apply for that?
I think it would be pretty tough for the studio to justify it, honestly. And I mean no disrespect. I mean, my first 17 years in the animation community was as a production person. So I love that job path. It's hugely rewarding, and I wish this wasn't so, but I think there's enough supply to fill the demand locally. So we don't have to consider taking visas for that. And I wish it wasn't the case. I mean, I don't know what country that person was from, but I know someone at Disney who is Australian, and she applied for I'm trying to remember what kind of visa it was. I think it was just a regular immigration visa, and I don't know if it was an E3, probably, but she applied herself through the country, has like an open lottery, and there's literally like, I don't know, some count them on your hands number of positions available, and she just got one. And so she came over and started her career here in production management, and now I believe is a production manager. So it's not impossible, but it's pretty hard. Yeah.
Okay.
But I encourage you to stick on your path, because it's such a great career path and so rewarding and so much fun. And the production assistant position, they become producers. They become people who are running the companies. So stick on it. Stay with your dream. Whoever submitted that question.
Yeah, that's great.
I think to kind of build on top of that, like the thing to kind of just keep in mind in general is, like, from what I understood, the point of a visa in any country is like the government saying, oh, we've looked in our country, we don't have someone that has this specific skill sets. And that is why we need this person from outside our country to come in and that's what the visa is, And I think like if you kind of use that kind of rubric to kind of, test whether or not, does this position, is this position a position that nobody in that country can do, or no one in the country has that specific set of skills? If you're John Wick or whatever, not John Wick, what is it? Taken guy, Liam Neeson. But, essentially that, like you think about what is, am I, does my skill set not exist in that country, And that's kind of the way to answer that question, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a great point.
That's a really good way of saying it. And yeah, the whole visa idea is based on specialized knowledge or specialized skill that we can't fill from within. And in fact, when somebody sponsors you for a green card, if that ends up, the path that you take, when a company sponsors someone for a green card, they have to post the position they're filling with a green card applicant and prove that that green card applicant outmatches anybody local who applies for the job. So often there's a stage that I have to go through where when somebody's trying to get a green card, they put me on the case at the studio, and I'm literally looking at resumes that come in and trying to figure out, like, okay, are we going to have to take this person and give up our green card case? Because we have to prove that the green card case person is a better fit in a significant way. And even that we couldn't bring up this local person who's already a citizen or has a right to work in a reasonable amount of time to be as good as the person that we're suggesting getting the green card for. So that's kind of how that, like, the scale works. So it's a hard sell on the production.
Sounds like it.
Totally.
I'm gonna take a nap. No, I'm just kidding. So the next, that's awesome. Thank you, Doeri. That was really comprehensive, and I think you're just going back to say there's there's all these kind of things you have to consider. It's like it's kind of a juggling act at that point. This is a really interesting one. So this question is, I'm in the country on a school visa. I'm assuming the U.S. Can I apply for a work visa before I get a job?
I don't think so. No, you have to get an offer, because once you get the offer, then you have to apply for OPT. Man, also because in order to work and to get paid, I mean, you also have to get like a social security number, and most internationals don't have one once they come here to the United States. So I remember getting my social security number when I applied for the OPT. But I would also say, you can't just get a work visa without getting an offer from a job or from a studio.
You can get your training path set up, though. You can get your OPT or CPT going, but you don't want to start it too soon, like I said, because you don't want to start the clock ticking and use it all up before you get a gig.
Right.
Yeah, I applied for my OPT, I think 2 months before I graduated, because once you get the OPT, yeah, like you said, it's the time ticking starts. So I think I got mine around March. So I think my OPT lasted until next March, and then there's a grace period once that expires. So that grace period means that you have like 2 months to get everything packed before you leave the United States.
On that topic, I think like outside of the US, when you're considering that, I went to university in Canada, but throughout the entire time I was living in Canada, I didn't have a Canadian citizenship. So I was on, study permits and all that kind of stuff the entire time. But when I went to university, I got an offer from Sony at the time. And because the Canadian study permit allows you to work, but work on your study permit, but only up to 20 hours a week, I was still able to, take the job at Sony, but then only work up to 20 hours a week. I think it's very, very, very rare that happens, but it's still possible, in Canada to be able to work in freelance or work in certain studios that will allow it while you're still in school. But again, like the easiest path is to finish the degree, get the degree, and then just kind of move on from there.
Awesome. Yeah, and next question, really quick. Like I think we covered this, but I'm pretty slow. But the question is, can I apply for a work visa in the U.S. from another country without having a job? Does that fall into what you guys were just talking about? Okay.
I think with the O1, yeah.
With the O1, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
I think to add to that, I think in some ways it is out of our control of what we can do. I think all we can really do is what was mentioned earlier about like collecting info and working on your craft and making sure that's the best it could be, and the company will sponsor you and get your visa, because that's all we can really do is trying to get our skill level to the point where the company can sponsor you. But other than that, it's kind of out of our control,
Right.
I believe.
Yeah.
Right.
To add on to that, just like, it's okay. Like sometimes you're going to apply and then you're going to get rejected. That's totally fine. Like that applies to more than just a visa, but it applies to, working at studios too. You're going to apply, you're going to get rejected, and it's totally fine. But that's just part of the journey. It's just part of, getting better. It's just part of building a skill set. That doesn't mean don't try again. Doesn't mean don't apply again at a later date. It just means not for now. Just keep going. You know what I mean? And like that's something that, kind of discourages a lot of people because it's a long, expensive process. And then when you get if you get the rejection letter, it can hurt and it can really discourage you. But, don't let it. Like just keep going.
There was a question I still want to add on that I used to think about as well. And it's like, we said to apply, but what happens if you apply too much? Do recruiters get annoyed? Because like you want to make a connection, but at the same time you want to constantly apply. What is the balance? What do you all think?
Yeah, well, I can tell you what I prefer, and that is for people to apply if they have something new to show or if it's a different role than they've applied for before. Because if you've applied before and it's the same role and your material's the same, then I'm like, okay, I just spent 47 clicks getting all the way into this person's material, and it's the same material I've been looking at for 2 years. I like it, but I need something fresh to show to try to sell this candidate. I would say, when you have updates, always reapply, or even send out an email to your recruiter network saying, hey, I just updated my reel, or I have new storyboards I can now show, whatever, and keep them up to date that way with your latest work and your availability. Something new or a totally different role that you're applying for are great reasons to reapply.
That's awesome. That's great.
But no, I never get annoyed at anybody. I always love to see people apply. And recruiters watch your career over time. Like we watch you guys. We watch you. And look at this stuff. Oh, he's getting so good, There's a balance, like Doeri mentioned. Like when I was applying to Disney, I would apply every time I had a new shot, and they'd be like, "Come on, man, you don't have to apply every time you have a new shot." And so that kind of like was a double-edged sword and just like killed me. Of like, can you just stop applying so much? But like I think it's just kind of like when you have 3 new shots, 4 new shots. But I remember people telling me you're applying too much because I would literally apply every time I had a new shot because I really wanted to get in. But I know that you guys, it's like 12:09. We have a bunch of questions, so I'm thinking maybe we can do like a lightning thing. Like I will, like I kind of want to get through some questions, and some of them we might have already covered. But let's get through it. Let's see what we can do. Let's do a panel lightning round and see how this goes. It might go terribly, but let's do it. And so you have 5 seconds to answer every question. No, I'm just kidding. I wanted to get to the Discord questions. The Rise Up Animation Discord. What's up, everybody? Thank you for submitting your questions. But now I'm just wasting time.
From the Discord, Jais, Jais, says, and we might have covered this. Can you talk about the requirements of the extraordinary ability visa, the O1, and how to best prepare for it? We talked about this a little bit before beginning a school term in the U.S. so that we can apply for it after graduation and avoid returning to our home countries. On that note, how much do you recommend completing a short film before coming to the U.S.? Does that help you?
The short film helps if you send that short film to a lot of festivals. I used a website called filmfreeway.com to like submit all my previous films I did at CalArts to a bunch of festivals. And then if they get officially selected for the screening or you win an award, you can use that as proof to help you for your extraordinary ability visa applications. In terms of like getting an O1 right after graduation, I mean, I didn't go through that path, like, because I didn't have enough professional experience. So I kind of wanted to have a bit of credit for that. That could help in my O1 application. So I did have a bit of work experience after school that I used for my O1 application. I did have to fly back because my OPT ran out. So that, you know, that's normal for a lot of people, where people would have to fly back after their F1 expires, their OPT expires, or they didn't get the H1B. You know, because the OPT, I mean, the O1 also takes a long time to process too. Like the first time you apply for it, it can take several months. I remember sending my application around summer of 2015. I didn't get it until like November, and I was already back home in the Philippines by the time I got it approved. And what sucked about that too is once you get like that approval notice, that timer already starts and you're still not in the United States. And, you know, it's like at least a month of like going to the US embassy in your country to get that stamp. You need to get that stamp from the country of where you're at, or outside of the US. Outside of the US, so that you can like have an official stamp and you can still travel outside the US with that visa, because you want to have that visa in the passport, and you have to do it through a consulate or an embassy. I did mine in my home country, but yeah, like it would take like a month or two to get that prepared. So for me, what it looked like is I got my approval notice on November. I didn't get to go back to America until like January, and I already lost like 2 months of my of how long my O1 lasts for because of that. Because you still have to do a bunch of paperwork. You still have to do the online application for the visa interview. You go to the embassy, get interviewed, and then you wait like a week to get your passport back with the visa, and then you have to figure out everything from there.
I also want to add to what Toniko said was also, I'm guessing you, because I got my O1 through the company, so, but if you got it on your own, that also costs a lot of money, correct?
Yeah, I think it was about $5,000.
Right, and I feel like if you're right out of school and the O1 is for the extraordinary talent thing, that I feel like it'd be very difficult and you might be wasting a lot of money.
That's a good point.
At that moment. So it might best to like look for what visas, the relationship between your country and the US or whatever country you want to go to, and see what type of visas there are. But that's really, and you know, and if you need the company to sponsor you, then that's be the route to go. Because I believe the O1 will take a long time, because even after I've worked at the studio for 6, 7 years, I still had to wait 2 years before I even got my O1, because I was collecting even more information that I did before from the TN. So I think it is a long process. So maybe it might be best to wait to apply if you're going to get your own lawyer for that.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, like, you brought up a really good case where it's like, you want to have a bit more in your like portfolio or your work experience so it can actually help your case. Because there's like 3 different states of your application. There's like admit, refusal. So like you pay $5,000 and then you send everything in and you can get rejected and you don't get refunded. And then there's like pending. There's like another state where it's like pending more material. So it's like you send everything in, and then you hear back, and they want you to send in more material to justify for that O1 application. And then there's, of course, you get approved. But you want to do everything you can to build that case so you can get approved, instead of just, you know, like wasting that money.
Yeah, I was gonna ask too, and everyone can chime in on this. We talked about the materials that you have to sort of accumulate, you know, to make your case for the visa. And specifically, I was thinking, I remember when Benson was going through this, specifically, can you talk, Benson, about like what you actually did, like the specific things that you did to sort of like compile your case, or like, you know, make the...
Yeah, so when I was applying for my O1, I've asked a lot of people that went through that process, and a lot of them also said to Google your name and see what comes up, because most of the time someone may have written a little article about you, or they've mentioned your name, and I feel like I would save those links in a folder or something like that, or save those pages, and that way, screen cap would probably be best, and so you have those in folders, so whenever you do go to apply for it, you can send all that stuff to your lawyer, and they could help, you know, file all that stuff for you. Also, like, if there's interviews that you've done with your local home newspaper, or any type of newspaper article, really, having a website, like Doeri said, online presence is great. Doing festival work, if you're tabling, you're meeting a lot of people, you know, they'll probably put your name on their website, screen cap that, or just anything where you are visible online, because that's how everyone is searching everybody anyways right now, these days. And I would say also, for me personally, I would probably have a separate account for your art stuff, because people, when they're looking at your work, they're probably gonna look at Instagram or Twitter or whatever social media platform you're on, and keep that separate from your personal, just so that, you know, some people want to see just your art. If this person looking at an art director is looking for art, they just want to focus on your art, and you have a bunch of personal stuff that might get in the way of, you know, it's like your portfolio essentially, and that's sort of how I kind of view it. Let's see what else. Yeah, interviews, testimonies, like Toniko said. I asked a lot of my past teachers, and or previous employers would be great, just for like a letter of recommendation, and just to kind of just build it for now. And also the great thing is you keep in contact with those people as well, which is great, because then when you go home, you can, I don't know, talk to your school and, you know, keep that relationship going. So I think that's the type of stuff that I did for me. And that took about 2 years to kind of collect that information, because I never won any awards specifically for my animation. But I work in children's books, so I published books, and that's another name that you have out there as well. So that kind of also helped me get my O1 and eventually my green card. So
that's awesome.
Another thing too is looking for really, really specific awards for yourself, because sometimes you'd be surprised, like, oh, the Northwest Regional award for animating on a very very specific awards that you can apply for, and then you know that allows you to kind of build all these different things to your name, and like you'd be surprised what people give out awards for. So just Google Google stuff, and you'll get them.
That's really funny. I was gonna say really quickly, I just want to acknowledge Amelia, Claudia, Leon, and Greenfield from the Discord. That I read through your questions. It sounds like we answered them in the conversation because everyone was so thorough. But thank you for your questions, and I think they were really everything that the panelists covered. And then the first question that we had from the live Q&A, really quickly, and let me know if anyone has a heart out, and that's no problem. But I think maybe this one is best for you, Doeri. Anonymous attendee, very cool. When we fill out a job application for studios like Disney, at the end, they ask us if we need a work permit for the job. Does this just checking the yes box automatically disqualify them in terms of?
No, the recruiters look at everything. And, you know, there's only a handful of us at each studio. So it's maybe 3, 4, 5 people in a department. And we look at every single thing that gets submitted. So never think that checking that's going to take you out. We'll still look at it. And so just by applying, like Ari was saying, you're starting that relationship already. But it's important to really say so, because one of my first experiences, I was recruiting for Disney Toons, and there's this great story artist, Tom, who was coming over from DreamWorks, and the DreamWorks recruiters had said, oh yeah, it should be so easy for you to switch over your visa to another studio. So he checked, no, he didn't need help with the visa. So I thought he didn't have a visa. And so I was like, great, let's do this. We're booking you. Here's your start date. And he was like, okay, do you need to see my visa? And I was like, whoa, what? You know, so I got my big hand slap for not having checked. And people were like, he has an accent. How could you not know? I'm like, I don't know. I play in an Irish band and I don't have an accent.
There's a lot of like people with strong accents here that have like citizenship. So it's like, I get it.
Use that as my criteria. Anyway, so it's really important that you just put all your cards on the table and let the recruiter try to help you. And and even if there's something in the deal, you know, if you're thinking about relocating and you're going to have to break a lease on an apartment. I know here, you know, it's like 30 days or 60 days, but I know in some countries, you know, you have to have a 1-year lease on your apartment. And if you're going to have to break that to make a move, always tell the recruiter what's holding you back from making the deal, from accepting the deal, so they can try to help you solve it. Because maybe the animation team is so excited to get you into that seat by the start date so you can be trained up with everybody and hit the crunch with everybody else, that they'd be willing to kick in an extra $10,000 to split the difference on breaking your lease with the landlord. So always bring it up with the recruiter, what's holding you back or what your concerns are, and definitely be honest about that on your app.
Right. That's great. That's great. Vicho Friendly, he asks, because this information that we're talking about now it's hard to find right out there. So he's asking, does anyone know a website that, you know, or something like this, where they can answer questions or help guide with the process? Is there like that out there?
Well, there's a Twitter group that I'm a part of and I follow. It's called LA Animation Expats, and it's basically just like a bunch of people. Here, let me type that out actually. LA Animation. But it's a bunch of like people who also dealt with visas and, you know, like helping each other out, especially based in like the LA area or America in general. Right. I think they also have their own Discord group too.
Yeah, that's cool. I don't know of any. If you guys know of any, I think that's why there's a lot of questions, you know, within the community of like, you know, the visa stuff specifically. But thank you. Yes, awesome. Thank you, Toniko.
I mean, if you Google the type of visa, you will get some basic information to kind of remind you of what we talked about today. Some of it's kind of hard to drill through, but you can get the basics from just Googling too once you know what you're looking for.
The immigration websites, like they label all the visa numbers, J1, EB1, O1A, and what each of those mean. It's crazy. You know, there's a visa for athletes, there's a visa for all types of things. Missionaries here and there.
Missionaries.
I think so. I think I remember seeing it.
Can we sign?
What's up?
No, I was just dumb joke.
There's a lot.
If that was easier to get, and then if we can go that route, the missionary route. No one thinks I'm fun. But that's cool, man. Yeah, thank you for sharing that one.
Oh,
LA Animation Expats.
They're having a problem finding it.
Oh, It's no worries. Here's a good question. Does the school that you study in make a difference? Can the school, whether it's kind of prestigious or not, increase your chances of getting a job that sponsors your visa? I mean,
Wait, say that again?
oh yeah, sorry. Depending on what school you went to, like let's say you went to CalArts or Gobelin, does that, or Ringling, does that increase your chances of getting a job that sponsors your visa? Do they kind of look at that aspect of like, oh, you know?
I don't think so, because I feel like the majority of the people looking at the visas are people in the USCIS, and you know they don't know like what CalArts is or Gobelin, and just like, okay, he's educated and here's a degree, there's proof of that, there's transcripts. But I don't think like whatever school you go to, that necessarily affects your chances of getting the visa.
Yeah.
Got it.
On top of that too, I think like you said, you know, these immigration officers don't really know anything about, you know, the animation schools. But I think we mentioned it earlier that the school doesn't really, like, your degree doesn't really matter. Like what type of degree you get doesn't really matter. It's the fact that you have a degree, you know? So like, I think, but in that same breath, I also think it wouldn't hurt having a biochemistry degree from Harvard. Like, it's not gonna, you know, like I think people would look favorably upon that. But at the same time, for the requirement to check that box, do you have a degree? Yes. All you need is to have a degree. So the school doesn't really matter, from my understanding.
HR just posted a question about, you know, that they have a 3-year degree, but that's not called a bachelor's degree. So basically you have to prove that it's sort of equivalent to an American degree. So that might end up being, I have a bachelor's degree or I have this HND plus, which is a 3-year degree, plus I have 2 years of internships, or so you might have a combination that adds up to the degree. So that's a possibility, but yeah, it is like that you put it on the scale, and an American degree and your degree weigh the same somehow is the idea behind that requirement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for me it was like I had 2 years a diploma, and then I went back to school after a couple of years of working to get a post-diploma for 1 year. So that's really only 3 years of like college, university, like schooling. But then I've worked for like 6 years after that, 6-7 years. So then that, like Doeri said, adds up to, you know, that they can prove that you're qualified.
Yeah.
Someone asked, does online animation schools count? Like, I'm guessing from what this sounds like workshop classes like CDA, which is just like one class for 10 sessions. I don't think so, but maybe Doeri knows more about this.
Yeah, it's like even like Animation Mentor and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think it has to be an accredited program. And like I think Noman is becoming accredited, or has just become accredited, and they weren't before. So that's
if Anima School is accredited, I think Animation Mentor might be accredited too. I'm not
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't hired an international person from them yet. I think with a visa, with only that for education. I think the ones I've done, they had a degree, an art degree already, and then they got an animation mentor certificate. I don't think I've done anybody with that combination, so I don't know that answer.
Yeah, that makes sense. Next question really quick. Our friend Hania in Egypt asks, is it better to move to LA than look for a job, or try to get a job offer first as an international student, then move to LA? Sorry, strike that thing, student. Or try to get a job offer first as an international, then move to LA? Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
For me, I would say I probably wouldn't move to LA first, just because it's very expensive. or just the fact that you're moving to a completely different country and trying to get adjusted and looking for work can be very stressful. And also when I moved here, to get even a visa, like as like a credit card, like a Visa credit card, it's difficult because they need to prove that you have income and stuff like that. So I think it's better to wait till you get the job first, and then plus the company would, not all of them, but would probably give you some sort of like moving expense, which would be very helpful. So at least that's just my opinion.
I think, I mean, some people just like visit LA just to like as a tourist and then just meet people and stuff, but I wouldn't make the move before getting work.
Because you can't guarantee when the company is gonna hire. If they post it, you don't know if they're gonna be hiring in 2 weeks or a few months down the line because they need to prepare. So that stuff you can't control. So it's better to, So like Toniko said too. Just kind of wait.
Yeah, that's great. That's informative. The next question would be, someone wrote in, I graduate this year from CalArts, and because of COVID, I am not currently in the US. What advice would you give me in terms of handling OPT this year? And would it be better to be there in person instead of here? Does that make a difference? Is it harder to get the work permit once your OPT is over? What do you guys think on that? Can you repeat the question? That's like 9
It's a good question because especially with COVID, it's so hard to like give the right advice. I mean, from my gut feeling, I would just say I wouldn't even think about traveling. I would just stay where you're at. And, just continue work, either working or freelancing from there, or just focus on your own work or studies. I personally wouldn't like try and go for an OPT around this time right now. That's just my personal gut feeling because I've never experienced something like this. This is all entirely new, but that's what I would do. But maybe you guys have better advice for that.
Is OPT the student visa, correct?
It's basically like the thing you go for after you graduate.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think if you're going to school in your own country but attending CalArts, at the end of the day you're still gonna get accredited for the degree or whatever education that you have in the end of the day. It doesn't matter where you did it because of where, with COVID situation and everything. When you graduate, you're still gonna get that degree or something like that. And then when you apply, it's still going to say degree. It's not going to be any different depending on location, if that makes sense.
I have a question for, I guess, Toniko. Is there a time period after you graduate your degree? Like, is there a time period that you can no longer apply for OPT? Or is it like you have to apply for OPT within, 3 months or whatever?
I mean, I applied mine before I graduated. Oh no, bye Doeri.
Bye Doeri.
I applied mine before I graduated, and it was always recommended from the international advisors from my school, and a lot of my classmates before me who are also international also did it before, because like you have to also like do the paperwork for the OPT. It's like what Doeri said. It's like at least they know that you're trying to get the OPT, and there's preparation for that in case, like, let's say you get hired for a trainee program at a studio. Now at least you have an OPT ready for that. Like there's like OPT and CPT. There's a difference between the two. CPT's like you get it when you're still studying at school before graduation, so that's good for things like internships and like in school jobs, and an OPT is the one after.
Right. I'm so lost.
Are you mute, Bobby?
Oh.
Yeah, I can.
No. Am I on mute? No.
No, we can hear you.
I was whispering to myself in my head. I'm so lost. I'm like glazed over. Like OPT, CPT, OPP. None of
I
that.
think if you already graduated, because Annie's asking, if you already graduated, I would consult your school for that, because they're the ones that are dealing with that. Just like consult them and get advice from them, because they're the ones who had your F1, and they're probably the closest ones that are related to the OPT.
Yeah. To answer that. Whoa. Ranjit. Cindy, sorry, I'm trying to go down the list.
Yeah, there's a lot.
I'm trying to figure out like what has been covered already, but I don't think this one has been. From Cindy Mora, she says, if you go out from school and start doing freelance, as a lot of students in New York do, how can you transition from freelancing with your OPT and CPT to a work visa? I just confused myself with that question.
Yeah, I think.
Did I say that right?
I think I get what they're saying. I mean, for the work visa, like you have to get it from a sponsor, from a studio. With like CPTs and OPTs, they're usually from the school. In terms of transitioning, it's all in the matter of like transitioning from a different visa, basically.
Okay. Awesome. Imi Oladosu has a question for Benson. Benson, have you had complications with your TN visa while working in America? Like, did you ever have to go home for a bit while they sorted things out? I think everyone's had that experience.
Yeah, luckily I haven't. If I would have, well, it's more like if my visa is expiring, then they would do all the paperwork while I'm still in the US. And then to get the stamp on my passport, then I'll have to fly home. Then when I come back into the States, then they'll stamp my actual work visa, and they will have a date of how long my visa is going to last for. So Disney will do all the paperwork and tell me, okay, your visa is for this long. And then I leave the country, and then I come back. And that's when the immigration officer will put the stamp and make that official. But I have had friends where they would have to go, like they would have to leave the country and go back to their home country and apply at their embassy over there, wait for their approval, then they can fly back. So I think it really depends on the visa and which country you're from as well.
Got it.
Yeah, I know. I have a friend who they don't have a U.S. visa, a U.S. embassy, so he had to like fly to Turkey to do his U.S. visa interview and eventually his visa. Yeah. So some countries don't even have a U.S. embassy.
Yeah. Ari, this one might be for you. Mili La Plaza. She asks, let's suppose you're on a work visa in the UK and your contract expires or doesn't get picked up. What happens then? Can you apply to other jobs in the UK with that visa? Do you get a grace period, quote unquote, where you can look for other jobs? Do you need to get another sponsor, or do you have to go back home?
Yeah, so luckily I have a British passport, so I don't need to worry about visas here, but pretty much everybody I work with is on visas. Yeah. And from what I understand, in this industry, the two main visas that you have to worry about are the Tier 2 and the Tier 5. The Tier 2 visa is kind of like the open work permit, where as long as you have as long as you have a job, you can continue to work, and you don't need a specific company to sponsor you. But then you have the Tier 5 visa, which is if you're in the country with that company, and if your contract expires with that company or you get let go from that company, then you lose your visa. And I think from what I understand, there's maybe like a 30 to 90 day grace period, but I don't have any facts behind that. But the Tier 2, like, you don't have to worry so much about like, this company let me go and I have to leave the country. you don't have to leave, but you do have to find another job. You can't just, sit around not working. But if you're looking for UK work visas, I would highly recommend asking your company, if they're sponsoring you, asking your company, hey, can you sponsor me on a tier 2, just in case, because then that would allow you to kind of not be tied down to that one company.
On that note, Sharpie RP asks, I think you just mentioned it, what tier UK visa are you on for work, and how long did it take you to get?
So I was actually just answering that through the text thing. Yeah. But I can answer it here. I didn't need a visa, so I didn't have to go through that whole process.
Sure.
But I think from my friends that have had to go through it, it takes a few weeks to do. It can take 8 to 12 weeks, I think, to do the whole process. It's long, and it can feel a little bit draining, but as long as most companies will sponsor and cover all those fees, all you have to do is just kind of work with them, make sure that you're keeping all your information up to date, and you're kind of providing whatever they ask for as soon as they ask for it. That'll help speed up the process as much as possible. And that's kind of the same sort of general rule for pretty much any visa you want to get worldwide, is just kind of keep on top of things, making sure that you're communicating with the company or the government or whatever it is you need to communicate with, and all your stuff is up to date. And the hardest thing is to have a passport expire in the middle of your visa process, and that's heartbreaking, because everything kind of crumbles after that. So just keep everything up to date, really.
Yeah. I was just gonna add to the passport thing, because this is pretty interesting, in case your passport expires. So let's say you have a passport that has your visa for whatever country, for the US, and then that passport expires, and then you get a new passport. Do you have to apply for a new one? You pretty much don't. You can basically have your new passport, but then also bring that old passport with the visa stamp in it. So it has the dates of when that expires, and it matches with your current visa. So there was a time where I used to just bring 2 passports, my old one and my new one, but my old one had my visa that allowed me to basically work here.
Yeah, I had the same thing too, because it was in the middle of the visa, and I carried both passports and also the paperwork that the studio have given you. Because sometimes every immigration officer is different in every country, and sometimes they're not familiar with that visa you have. So it's best to have the letter of employment with you, which the company will provide for you and all. But always put that stuff in a folder with you when you're traveling, just in case.
So there's usually a few things that you always want to have when you're traveling. There's the approval of notice. So it's this USCIS document that shows what visa you have. It's not the visa, but it just shows that it's approved. And then, like you said, the letter of employment, or a letter from the company saying that you're currently working there. Your O1 stuff, or any documents that you use for your O1, and of course the visa, the passport, any of that.
Yeah, go to the nearest office supply store, get the nicest folder you can, and just carry that around all over the world.
Oh my goodness gracious! I
carry your trophy.
I want to add on to what Eric said about because when I got my visa to go to the UK, the one thing that had to scramble was getting my transcripts from my schools, because I went to school at Sheridan and I was in Vancouver, and trying to get the envelope and all the certificate and all that kind of stuff could take a while, because you don't know when they're going to respond to you. So have all that stuff up to date. At least have copies of those from the school, because I think you can't do photocopies. They have to be certified from the school. So make sure you have your transcripts and stuff like that from your school. Because definitely when you apply for your first visa, they're going to want to, well, any visa really, even later, that they're going to want to see your transcripts from your school. So.
Yeah. Also, something to kind of just add on top of everything, yes, it's tricky to get into the US with different visas and whatever, but generally, like when you start working around the world, you kind of build a reputation. Once you are able to get multiple visas approved, like that makes the process easier to kind of go from different countries. So like if you go work in France and you get a French visa, and you go work in Canada, get a Canadian visa, it really helps kind of build your reputation a little bit. You know what I mean? So when you are applying for,
I was just gonna say, I did notice the immigration officers get nicer to me over time.
yeah.
Before, it felt like an interrogation every time I fell in line, and there'll be. It felt like there's just always this scare when you're in the line through the immigration officer in LA. It's like if you get sent to the white room after the immigration officer, oh, that sucks, man. That's like further interrogation. And there's always that fear that many internationals always have coming back to LA. That white room. They confiscate everything, your phone and stuff, and you're there for like hours. It's terrible. I've never been there, but there's always that fear. But then like
same. So
but then like over time, like they're like, oh, welcome back. Welcome back to the US. I'm like, oh my God, that feels so nice.
Ooh,
I have a little story about that.
How to Train Your Dragon 3, did you? My niece loved
Actually, just one more thing. One of the immigration officers used to work at DreamWorks. So when he saw my thing, he said, "Oh, what building were you in?" And it's like, "Oh, I was in the Riverside." Like, "Oh, cool. I was in Chernar." Like, whatever. Yeah, it was.
Go on through.
So cool.
Yeah.
Not even in the.
Welcome to America.
Go on.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
I have a funny story about that because, like, my full name is Erefeolua, which is a Nigerian name. My last name is Santos. I have a British passport. I remember when I was trying to, when I was going in for my American visa, I got to the immigration guy, and he's like, "Well, let me get this straight. You have a Nigerian name in a British passport, a Spanish last name when you're trying to come into America? This is too elaborate to be fake. Have a good day." And I was like, that. It depends on some people, but like the sad part of that too is that like some people get sketched out by that, and it really depends on that one guy, or one person.
Yeah, like at the airport, do you ever like go through the passport customs and you're like lined up for your person, and then there's the other person, and you're like, this person looks nicer though. And
yep.
Really by the book, and they're gonna question me over everything. I was like, should I switch with the nicer?
And don't joke with them, because you don't know if that custom officer has the same sense of humor. They may not want to joke with you, and if you say something that you think is a joke and he doesn't or she doesn't,
oh my God.
White room.
Yeah,
that wasn't funny. White room.
Well, my white room wasn't.
White room, and then Toniko, Benson, me, and Ari are all there in the white room because you took advice from the panel.
We tried cracking jokes.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. I can go ahead and we can do a hard out at 1 maybe, and maybe answer a few questions. I'm still kind of going down the list. These are great questions, guys. Thank you so much for submitting.
Absolutely.
These are awesome. I hope that if I didn't get to your questions, that they answered it in kind of the bulk of the conversation. But this is a good one. I think just to break it up a little bit, Sharpie, our friend Sharpie, again, I hope I'm saying that name right. Honestly, these topics give me a lot of anxiety, and all of your answers have helped out with this for sure. But do you have any advice for the emotional and mental aspect of handling all this stuff? I'm sure we've gone through the ringer. Ari, what do you think?
Yes, I think definitely having a support group is really, really, or like your support, system is really important. Because I remember when I got accepted into the internship at Pixar, obviously it's an extremely exciting moment, and I was very, very excited, and to start the whole visa process. I remember there was I don't remember specifically what it was, but there's one small thing that, like, I was on the phone with them, like, oh, this might be a problem. We might not be able to get your visa because of this. And I'm like, just that feeling of like, oh, I'm so close to, the thing I've been working towards. And it just because of technicality, everything, you know, could fall apart. And like that, it's really important to kind of have people around you to kind of like, you know what, it's okay, and reassure you, just like, you know, it's all part of the process, and it's all going to work out in the end. It didn't, obviously it worked out in the end, but then at the end of the internship, another similar thing happened. Because I didn't have a degree, they weren't able to, you know, to extend me, because I wasn't able to get an O1 because, you know, I didn't have enough to my name. So it was another experience of, oh man, I have to leave essentially, you know, this dream job, and, you know, and move away. And I because I'm not born in America, you know, and it was like, that sucks, you know. But again, just having that sort of network around you and all that kind of stuff. But the thing I was reminded is like, it's really important to know that studios are studios, you know, and like it's what's most important is it's getting better, getting, you know, building your skill set, building who you are. And, you know, people move around all over the place. You know, you're going to work with all these different people. As long as you are, you know, as long as you're putting your best into the work, you know, the opportunities will come, and it may not be in America, it may not be in Canada, it may not be anywhere, but as, you know, just putting yourself out there and trying to build your, I don't want to get too sentimental or whatever, but it's, you know, just don't give up, essentially, you know, have your support system and don't give up.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Benson.
Just say, like, I think, like Eric said about support is great, asking people that have gone through the process. I think for me, you know, I was always like, oh, when I got the job at Disney, I was like, this is my first visa to go to the US. And like, what if the visa doesn't work out, right? So you stress about that. So I never told anybody that I even got the offer, because I was so nervous that it wasn't going to go through. But all that you can do is prepare, right? Like, is to prepare all the paperwork, because that stuff is when the lawyer starts to ask you questions. You have that at the ready, because once it's sent off, it's really out of your control. So I know it's easier said than done, but it is out of your control. So all you can do is just wait, and hope for the best. And you know, like Eric said also about like being in the US, and because we're not born here, that we need this visa. But the fact that the studio is even considering getting your visa is already saying a lot about yourself and what you can do. So let's say the visa at that time doesn't work out. That's okay. The fact that you went through the process and the company did sponsor you mean that they will probably do it again in the future. It could be whatever the circumstance is. And that means that another company might be able to make it work. So, you know, we get a lot of rejections in this industry. But the thing is that when we get that, we just need one yes, right? And that's the same thing with visas, right? It's just that one opportunity, and, you know, it will happen. It's just a matter of time and timing and everything. So, So just, I think all we can do is prepare and make sure that our work is ready and good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, something I can add to that. There's no one that I don't know who is international that hasn't said this application is not frustrating at all. This has been a smooth ride, but I've never met anyone like that. Anyone that has been through this application that I personally know will have so much like hate for it or so much frustration against it. And it is a very frustrating, painstaking experience. You know, it's a lot of waiting, and sometimes you're being told, oh, you know, the Trump administration is doing this new thing that we never saw coming. It might affect your thing. You're just like, damn it. You know, again, it's like out of your control. But what is in your control is, you know, what you do with the preparation for the application. So a lot of the internationals I know who have the green card really do stand out in terms of like their social media platform or who they are as artists. Like if you hear like a person who comes from an international background, if you hear their name, it's like, oh, I know that person, because how hard internationals have to fight to sort of like qualify for an O1. It's a lot. Like you have to sort of like submit your work in festivals, be a part of exhibitions. it kind of forces you to take initiative, but there's also good things that come from that initiative that's far from just visas. It's also like how you stand on your own. It like for a lot of people who it's like because they had to do their own personal projects for the visa, they had to do exhibitions for the project, they had to teach or be juries for the project. They also now made a name for themselves within the industry. Like they've made projects for themselves that helped them in the long run that goes beyond just visas. So, you know, like kill two birds with one stone. If God gives you lemons, make lemonade. So for me, there has been good things that did come from this whole visa application. I worked much harder. I put myself out there in terms of talking, in terms of speaking, in terms of like developing personal projects. Initially, I thought it was just for the visa, but it did help me in the long run for future endeavors and future opportunities. So, you know, make the best of what you have. It is also a frustrating process, but part of that frustrating process also leads you to take more initiative, which helps you in the long run. So, like Ari said, like have a support group, you know, keep working your own skill. As Benson said, like you just have to like, it goes beyond just visas. It's also like investing in yourself too. Like all these things that you're doing, it's going to make a name for yourself.
That's awesome. That's great. That's fantastic. And I something that just went through my mind now is like, if you Google any of these guys, you'll see all of their work online, you know, like dating back to however. So just make yourself visible. I think, you know, in the long run, Toniko and everyone in Benson and area we're talking about, make yourself visible online, your work visible online. But yeah, that's it. Man, I'm going to let you guys enjoy your dang Saturday. Thank you so much, everybody, the panelists and attendees, for having this conversation. Thank you so much for your questions. We're sorry that we couldn't get to all of them, but hopefully the conversation in bulk answered a few of your questions. And if you guys have any more questions, you know, additionally, just send them all to Toniko. He'll personally answer them in handwritten letters and then send them to you via.
And he'll animate them too.
He'll animate.
I'll flip.
He'll animate them all. That's a promise. A promise from Toniko himself.
Legally binding, I think so, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Sign it, letterhead.
Signing a letterhead. So he'll be doing that for like 39 years.
It'll be your testimonial letter.
Yes. Yep. But thank you everyone for coming. Guys, Benson, Ari, Toniko, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is so much fun.
And Doeri.
I realized.
Yeah, and Doeri, yeah.
Yeah, good morning. Enjoy your Saturday. Enjoy your weekend. Stay safe. If you're in California, wear a mask. Thank you, Doeri, wherever you are. Yeah, we'll see you guys at the next panel. Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it. So
thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, man.
Yeah, this is fun, guys. All right, do you guys want to do a virtual, bring it in for like a virtual hug? Hold on.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, baby. It's the only way I can hug someone in COVID nowadays. That's the truth.
Someone showed me this. Are you ready? Oh, I'm just kind of.
Whoa.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, that's great.
Like you from the,
I have to be
behind
really
the camera.
close.
Behind the camera.
Yeah, it's
I
like.
don't know what's happening. Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, it's so weird.
That's what it's going to be. Awesome. All right, you guys.
Cool.
Take care. Ari,
All right, see you guys.
Toniko, take
See you
care.
guys.
I'll see you
Thanks,
soon.
guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.